Hello and welcome back to Tactics Talk Bitesize. I'm your host, Adam Thornton, and we're back with a short form show that we kicked off, I think, towards the start of this year, looking at Rangers' tactical concepts with the use of tactical pads. So this will be hopefully 15-20 minutes long, and it's just intended to be a little taster as to what we think we will see over this pretty important summer. Joining me as always for these is Ali Bain. Ali, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, mate. I love your enthusiasm there as to how short this is going to be. There's probably more chance of Rangers winning the Champions League next year, but there we go. We'll see.
I think I said about 5 times. We'll keep it as short as possible. I think the last one was about 45 minutes, and that was. Yeah. But we'll try. We can do them little and often rather than one big goal. Okay, so big summer, Ali. I think we are all, as a fan base, united in the fact that Rangers need a big summer, but we're also united in the fact that Rangers need completely to revolutionise their attacking options, regardless of how last season went. With Kent and Morelos going, that always needed to happen. Money needed to be spent. Quality players needed to come in. We're still in the first week of June. The transfer window is not open yet, so there's absolutely no panic at all. But I just wanted to talk through, I guess, the changes that Michael Beale has made since Cup final, probably, just in terms of bringing in the Raskin and Cantwell and looking at this sort of split striker formation. The eagle-eyed amongst you will know I've put Cifuentes in there. That is not confirmed at all by anywhere that he is signing. I think we feel like that's likely. However, for the purposes of this and the skill set that he brings, I think it's worthwhile having a wee chat about what that could potentially look like. So yeah, Ali, big summer. Attacking options very much needed. We do have a fair amount of players who can play up there in the front 2 or 3, but I think most people are of the opinion that we need probably 2, maybe more likely 3 signings coming in there.
Well, I think the first reason for that, really, mate, is obviously a freshness, right? There's a staleness perhaps has kicked in just amongst the players, right, in terms of their relationships, how they play together. But also you got to think of it from like a scouting perspective, right? If they've came up against the same forward line or the same players, same individual skill sets the last couple of seasons. And obviously in the case of Sakala for sure, maybe not so much in Cantwell and Jolak there, but, they play each other so often, right? It needs sometimes a little bit of freshness. I think what Beale wants to achieve and what he wants from his forward line is remain consistent throughout his time. Obviously, he's chopped and changed the players for various different reasons. But also, I think we also have to look at the evolution of what are we playing against, right? Against, back 3s, back 5s. Sometimes, when Beale's came back, teams have tried to press us a little bit higher, so went to more back 4s. So, like I say, there's that variety there that I think we'll see, hopefully moving forward, that players can play a couple of different positions, and there's a few different, ways that we can do it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what I want to dig into, I guess. How have you found this new formation, if you like, or this new style where it has been a 4 at the back nominally, like you said? Lundstrom has come into the back line on more than a few occasions, and there's been a couple of games where we've actually lined up that way. But nominally, this sort of 4 at the back with a box in the middle. We were saying off air it used to be a diamond, but now it's a box apparently. But we're asking at the base, and then it's been sort of Jack and Lundstrom, I guess, and then Cantwell as the 10, and then 2 strikers up top, which has varied a little bit as we know with the options that we've had. How have you found that? I guess that sort of front 6 piece, if you like. I know the players have maybe changed, but that sort of shape that he's going for, is that something that you think will work? Is that something that you think he'll continue with next year, or is it just a sort of means to an end to get into the close season?
I think it will continue, and one of the things you hear him say a lot in the sort of interviews that he does is players playing closer together. So obviously what he means by that is their starting positions. Obviously it means their relationships and how they move the ball quickly between each other. If there's a lot of players swamping areas, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for us to be carrying the ball through the middle of the field, or even, to be honest, at times, playing line splitting passes. A lot of sort of new age tactics as to how you build the game up doesn't really apply to our league, because it's so unique in what we come up against. We come up against low blocks pretty much every game. I also think as well, you need to look at this, the other perspective, right? And that when the opposition has the ball, having so many players centrally, certainly with 2 forwards, just gives you so much more opportunities to counter-attack quickly to goal, right? There is almost no margin for error that an opposition player can take a bad touch or make a bad pass centrally without it leading to either a shot on goal or us having significant numbers there to, make a quick attack or a sort of, regenerated attack from wide areas as well. So I think that's where the focus is to put a lot more players in the middle has come from. And I think the counter to that is obviously the start of last season where we're playing with more sort of traditional wide players and it feeling at times like we're not able to go and press the ball again after it if we turn the ball over. So like I say, I think there's multiple benefits from playing the way we play. I guess it's now about finding the players who actually can play in those positions, and is that their actual skill sets, or is that something that we've sort of fabricated in order just to get them in the team? That's, I guess, the biggest question.
That's the thing that I'm most interested about, and I think we'll see how that goes from the early games. I'm not sure there's going to be too much more experimenting as when the season starts. I think it's going to be, here's the structure, here's probably the players that are going to be the first picks, assuming we have them all in, obviously, by the season starting, which would be nice. Let's talk about that front three then. So we've seen a few variations there. We've obviously seen Kent playing in the number 10, Cantwell being a little bit further back, and then we've seen the 2 strikers. At times we've seen Morelos up top, and then the maybe more traditional 2 number 10s that we've had. We've also seen at the last game against St Mirren, we had Sakala and Matondo playing wide, near enough, with, I think it was Hadji, almost playing as a kind of false 9. I'm going to assume that one was maybe due to lack of options in terms of players that we had injured, etc. But those are the 3 that I see then, either 2 10s behind a focal point, 1 10 behind 2 number 9s, and then the sort of 3 that we have seen before, probably a kind of winger on one side, maybe a goal scorer on the other side, and maybe a focal point up top. That's the 3 options I can see. For those positions, we do still have a lot of players, Ali, which is the interesting thing. We've got Cantwell, Sakala, Cholak, Roof, Matondo, Lowry, Lawrence. Doyle has been signed as well. So maybe Cifuentes, I know he's played a little bit forward. I want to get your thoughts on him from MLS in a bit, but he has played a little bit further forward at times there. So there's 9 or 10 players there that can play those 3 roles already. We're talking about needing another 2 or 3 in. Now, I'm talking about that from a quality, consistency, reliability point of view, but the elephant in the room there, I guess, is we probably need 3 or 4 of those players to leave as well. That's something we can come on to in a kind of another podcast later on in terms of when players are moving out. But if we ignore that elephant in the room for just now, and we assume that we're going with that, what would you like to see coming in then in terms of skill set? Is it just bringing in better versions of the players that are there, or is there something else, or players that have left, or is there something else that you'd like to see coming in across that front line?
Well, if we figure in the front line, right, any front line Rangers is going to have a player that can play inside the box, right? Whether it be a target player, a poacher, or however you want to frame your number 9. There's how are we going to get the ball up to the forward line? So again, in this clip here, Cantwell, there's the link between the midfield and the forwards. I think it's that third attacker that we've yet to really fully get right. And obviously Sakala's been one that sort of filled that role nominally, where it's either running off the forward, that's either, just creating havoc, making diagonal runs, just sort of charging everywhere, or it's that sort of more cerebral sort of Kent version of, well, between the midfield and the forward, I'm going to try and make dribbles, make attacks, try and carry the ball through those spaces. So really, that it's that position for me that I feel that if we're committing to playing 2 forwards, it's how we get the ball from the midfield to the striker. Now, obviously, that sounds really, really simple in sort of base terms. But if we think of the general ball progression, right? So if we go back to what we spoke about earlier with the box formation, typically it's 2 midfielders in front of the back 4. So the first entry pass out the back line at the midfield is testing the opposition's midfield now. Are you going to jump us, or are you going to stay back? So if they stay back, that next pass from, let's say, a Raskin or a Lundstrom or a Jack into Cantwell's position, that player now has to fit what the game needs. So if the game is there's lots of players blocking space, okay, now you've got a choice. Are you going to be a good ball carrier that can beat people centrally? Like looking at some of the clips of Kieran Dowell, I think that could definitely be a skill set of his. Or are we going for more a passer who sort of splits lines, threads little balls through like we've saw Cantwell doing? Or do we just miss that player out completely, playing at the strikers first of all, and then have a runner from deep in a Cifuentes type, forward movement as well? So I guess that's the question Beale's going to have is consistently how do we link those three lines up? The first, the second, the third line, being obviously the back, the middle, and the forwards. And then really how those sort of interchange from there based on what you're up against. Because if you're up against I'm trying to think of a good example here. A team down the bottom of the league, right? So let's take a Ross County who have absolutely no desire to win a game at Ibrox ever. Come in, sit in their block, happy to just, cover spaces. Whereas if you come up against the Hearts, who are a little bit more aggressive and want to come pressure, well, that's two completely different styles.
Yep.
Do we have one player that can fit across both those styles? I'm not so sure we do. So that's when you come to squad building, you're trying to think about obviously those eventualities.
So we always focus on the players coming in, and I'm quite guilty of as well. If we get this type of player, all our problems will be solved. I think there's been points over the last few years where it probably wouldn't have mattered who was up front. We could have had Benzema up front, and we still couldn't get the ball to him. I would say in sort of key ways, or we didn't create enough high quality chances to do that. The three players that have been linked the most, or there's at least been chat about bids, etc. I don't know, there's been so many links, is Lewis Palma, Morgan Whittaker, maybe more January than now, and then obviously Cyril Dessers has come out in the last couple of days. So they do seem like, to me, Whittaker and Palma do seem like maybe a little mix of a Kent and Sakala type profiles. Dessers to me feels like a bit of a mix between Cholak and Roof, in the sense that he is quite physical, he can hold the ball up, presses quite intelligently in the way that Roof does too. And he does seem to have a decent eye for goal. Doesn't play a huge amount, I think, in the last couple of seasons. He's got 13 90 minutes for Feyenoord in the league and got 9 goals. He got a lot more in the Europa League. Conference League, sorry. And then last year he did only get 5 or 6 goals for Cremonese, I think, but I don't think he played 90 minutes worth of games. So he does seem to score goals, but I'm not sure why he's not playing as much. We'll have to have a look into that and see if it is something that comes in. So it sort of feels like those are the type of players that we would bring in there. But again, to come back to my original point, bringing in those players is fine. It's how you get the ball to them. I think something I've noticed, certainly, how things have changed a little bit, and we have to caveat end of the season, league's done, blah, blah, blah. The introduction of Raskin, I guess, is the deeper midfielder on his own. And then John Suter and Ridvan Yilmaz. I want to talk about that a little bit, because Yilmaz in particular, we know what Barisic will do. He'll come up here, Cholak will run in, Barisic will cross the ball into him. Happy days, we'll score a goal. That sounds brilliant. But the thing about Ridvan, Ali, that I think will be quite useful is he will probably play a little bit narrower, and I actually think both will play a little bit narrower, Yilmaz and Tavernier. That will leave space to stretch. It will also leave space for Cifuentes to come out and make those sort of out-to-in runs, if you like, to allow this space for Ridvan to come through. Like for me, getting the ball in these type of areas is much more preferable than getting the ball in these type of areas, given the pack defences, etc., that we see. We've already seen on a couple of occasions Yilmaz getting into these areas and maybe just his final ball letting him down. So that change that we've got there, with Suter being very, very aggressive and stepping out and being able to make those passes in a way that maybe Ben Davies hasn't done enough of, for me. And then the introduction of Yilmaz on this side with a bit of flexibility is really interesting. There, how do you think, again, players coming in change the way that things happen? Do you think this is a bit of an insight into how we're going to change things here? And for me, that's a better way to build up, and we might get to see more high quality chances and hopefully more goals.
I guess it also goes back to what we said earlier, mate, just about familiarity, right? Defences now are drilled. The minute the ball gets to Barisic's left foot, you know what's coming, right? Now, for as great as that cross is, it's almost they're an autopilot in how they defend that ball. With Yilmaz, you're not really sure, right? So if you figure the ball is going towards the end line, defenders at any level are almost like pre-programmed in where their body needs to be at certain points and height of the ball. in relation to the goal. But Yilmaz, you're not really sure. Is he going to dribble inside? Is he going to pass it? Is he like give and goes? We've even saw him just starting play by making an early diagonal ball through lines when maybe the midfield line isn't defensively set. So I think that is something that I'm excited about moving forward. Is that just what can come from that first build-up phase? Tavernier's went through a sort of evolution this past season that not a lot of build-up went through him in the early part of the year. Obviously, since Beale's come back, that's changed a little bit, and he started to get involved a little bit more. I think, though, to your point about the fullbacks positioning, this idea that we always have to play with high, wide fullbacks and that's it as a default, I think has hurt us. Yeah. So I think the fact we're changing that a little bit now gives the strikers a wee bit more freedom to pull into wide areas to try and get the ball. And by the way, that might be likes of a Roof or a Dessers, whoever it may be, a traditional striker starting wide, the ball funneling its way to the opposite end, and then they make the run to the back post to attack the ball. I think that's something that we've not seen for probably since the 55 season, really, right? Where you've got strikers attacking the back post. Everything seems to be very front post centric in the last 10 to 12 months. So hopefully that's something that we can see a little bit of a change from. But also I think as well it goes back to that point about you want your strikers to be creative. You want them to think creatively. If everything's a pattern, if everything's robotic, good coaches and good players will figure that out. It doesn't matter the quality difference. Even if, in Scotland, if there's 5 defenders versus 2 attackers, they're going to win.
I think for me, we spoke about the attack there, but for me, there needs to be a hell of a lot more off the ball movement. I think Roof's the only one that really makes you think that he knows what he's doing there in that sense, and it is natural. So that's the big thing for me. A bit of pace, someone that can finish, absolutely, but someone who's going to move and is going to move defences out the way. Absolutely understand that they're packed defences, but there's still things that we can do. And with, like you said, with the addition of Yilmaz in there, with Raskin getting a little bit further forward, Cantwell maybe moving in different ways to maybe Hadji would or certainly Kent would, it looks to me like it could be quite useful there. The one position that obviously isn't set in stone there because he hasn't signed yet and might not sign is Jose Cifuentes. I know you're out you're out in America, obviously. He's in the MLS with LAFC at the minute. One thing we've lacked, I think everybody would say, is a ball carrier from midfield, someone who can get forward, have a dig, score goals, link up on the edge of the box. We've had it in various forms, Arfield, Aribo. We've even tried it with Lundstrom and Jack a couple of times to no avail. This feels a little bit more natural to me. I'm always wary of players coming in who maybe aren't as used to high volume of possession that we've got in Scotland, and maybe aren't as deft, if you like, as maybe a Ryan Jack on the ball, etc. And Cifuentes to me looks physical, commanding. He can get forward, he can get a shot. He's certainly helped with that link-up play, like you mentioned. He's going to make those runs. I know you've watched him a little bit. He's going to make different runs that are going to allow Yilmaz and Suter to come forward, break the lines, create some spaces. What's been your thoughts on the very limited amount that you've seen him so far over there?
Well, Cifuentes is somebody that, again, from athleticism standpoint, has a lot to offer. Obviously very physically robust. So in terms of defensive duels, presses, getting after the ball, I think that's going to be a strength of his, pressing, from the front. The sort of nice carryover is that LAFC are a very narrow team up front, three strikers that play very close together. So in terms of style of play, not too far away from where we are. MLS in general is not a very high possession based league. LAFC, for example, when he first joined, were very transitional. It was very hit strikers, quick linking, get runs beyond. There's not a ton of width to their team, so there's a big emphasis on the central midfielders making those interior overlaps. For want of a better phrase, getting forward, getting into the box.
So that would be kind of like coming from where we are here, maybe coming out, also kind of coming in, and then you've got the fullback sort of bombing on at some points, but then swapping as well. So that's creating that
absolutely
unpredictability that you mentioned, yeah.
Well, that, but also like just pulling midfielders out of position.
Yep.
Right, you're now opening up spaces for other players, Or if they don't track the runs, then you're now putting a higher onus on the opposition's back line to try and pick up those movements as well. Then you add into that he's a big lad. You know what I mean? It's not an easy thing to track someone who's as quick as he is and as big as he is. So I think this really is the full package for what I think our team needs. I guess the bigger challenge is like it always is with players coming from, in this case, North America, but he is obviously South American. It's the style of football, right? It's the constant fouls. It's the tactical fouling. Again, that's becoming a thing in the MLS, but it's nowhere near what it's like in Scotland right now. So obviously that's something he's going to have to adapt as well.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's difficult to tell, and it's nowhere near as simplistic as this. But Ecuadorian football, from what I know, is not. They're not shy of physicality. Certainly, their national teams.
Right.
Well, so I know he's been in the MLS for a few years now, but he was there until he was 21, 22. So the hope is that he's had a bit of a rude awakening to that, because he's going to get it more here. Yeah, I'm quite excited about it. Maybe. Well, I was going to ask you this actually. Do you have concerns in terms of on the ball? I see people going on about he lost the ball quite a lot in these YouTube clips, etc. For me, with guys like Raskin and Jack. And Kamara and Davis, so albeit the latter two might not play too much this season. Do you have any concerns about that? Are we going to see someone who's a bit of a rough diamond, or is it just the fact that we're going to need to be able to use him in a way that accentuates his strengths, and maybe getting the ball off the back, taking the ball off the centre backs and pushing out wide is just not going to work for this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were to be critical, you could perhaps label that on him. Again, you need to look at the circumstances and the context, right? The team he plays for right now, there's a Spanish midfielder, Elia midfield. There's Kellen Acosta, who's a US national team player, who basically are the ball carriers. Yeah. They're the guys who pick the ball up. And it's up to Cifuentes now to make forward runs and basically live in the attacking third and play next to the strikers. So in that regard, he's not been asked to do it a bunch. Yeah. Is that really his skill set? I'm not so sure. I think he is better, making forward runs, making attacking penetrative movements. Again, another thing about LAFC recently is he's started to play with a second attacking midfielder next to him. So obviously it's Tillman's brother who plays in that spot, Timothy Tillman. So he's had to be a little bit more disciplined, I guess, in just making sort of runs on one side versus being able to play on both sides. I actually watched him in the first leg of the CONCACAF Cup final, and you could tell that he wasn't used to playing in a sort of two attacking mids, because he's literally running everywhere. So again, it's good or bad, right? It's how you take that on board. I think how it fits into our team, I think what he'll like a lot is that there's other people who are a bit more ball dominant, who want the ball a bit more, and he'll be able to make some movements off of them. But certainly this isn't a lad who's going to be lacking technically. I just don't think maybe it's his natural game to drop deep and pick up the ball. Yeah,
I think there's always a worry for me when you bring in players who have a different skill set to the players that are there. To me, that should be a positive. And you look at Barisic to Yilmaz, that for me is a positive. That will open up a lot more channels for us. But then there's guys like Sakala and Eaton and maybe Lundstrom who come in with a sort of different skill set and never really feel like they're at home. They never really feel like they fit. I'm not sure if that's just a quality thing or if that's just us not adapting our style or not. But given how long this Cifuentes link has been there, it's pretty clear that if he is signing, the manager has wanted him for a while. You would assume that he has a very defined role for him to play in the team. So fingers crossed, it's maybe more of he's coming in to be the man in a way that Raskin is, and we will maybe change the way that we play. We'll maybe push another couple of players out the way for him to make room. But yeah, I agree with you. Deep lying is not going to work for him. He's a attacking 8, I think, for us. And maybe playing next to Cantwell like we've got him here in that sort of box with Raskin and Jack, possibly Raskin and Lundstrom, maybe someone else, who knows, coming in. I think that's where I see him getting the majority of success for us. Okay, so that was a little look at the attacking options, but then I guess also how we might be able to attack moving forwards. Like we said, we're still on the 7th of June at the time of recording. I think maybe 2 or 3 of these players are probably unlikely to be in the first 11 when we line up on the first game of the season, or we hope, or else the summer's going to have been a bit quiet after an flurry. But yeah, we'll see how things go. If there's anything that you'd like us to have a look at in future shows, then please let us know in the comments. Maybe we didn't use the tactical pad as much as we thought there, but it's maybe more about changing how we attack and trying to visualize that. When we have maybe some more games to look at, we'll be able to look at moves that have happened in games and bring it to life a little bit more. But like I said, any suggestions or anything that you want us to look at in this format, then please stick them in the comments. Ali, thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. Okay, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon with another show.
This is a Heart and Hand production.